look into the future, what do you see? I really need to know now, is there a place for me? If we're gonna survive, the dream must stay alive.
Authorities are appealing for calm throughout the evacuation process.
The Tribe, A New World by A.J. Penn. Chapter 11. Stop it, Amber thought to herself. She couldn't help it, and gazed one more time at her reflection in the outside window on the ground floor level of the accommodation tower. How did she look? Eyeing her image in the window, the sun shining on it so it was like seeing into a mirror, Amber had a look of concern rather than checking herself out vainly. Since the discovery of Dr. Gideon's journal, Amber and the others had all been anxious about their health and the questions posed by the journal. I look fine, Amber said to herself. Didn't she? She focused again, studying her appearance. So far, nobody had been showing any obvious symptoms of any illness, other than being cast adrift at sea for so long. Amber tried to tell herself to stop worrying. She knew that once you allowed fear to take a grip, it would never let go, and she didn't want to allow herself to be driven by her worries, taking counsel of her anxieties. This was the approach she had always taken in the darkest days back home in the city, when the adults perished and the world fell into the abyss. Looking like the survivors wouldn't be far behind, with the future grim, Amber had always fought her fears. She had tried to keep calm, level-headed. It wasn't easy, though. And she could see how voodoo was such a potent force. If someone was ever told they were cursed, then that's all that was needed. The tortuous power of the imagination would do the rest. I'm okay, Amber insisted, thinking positively, forcing herself to turn away from her mirror image. She looked like she always looked. She felt fine. She just hoped that for the sake of her baby and the others on board, that they wouldn't meet the same fate as whatever happened to the crew of the Juseo Lee. So many questions remained unanswered. Who were they? And most importantly, what was their mission? The journal had mentioned Dr. Gideon was part of a so-called United Nations task force, the Pacific Fleet. What exactly was the United Nations task force doing in this region in the first place? The tribe had talked at some length about it all, wondering what Dr. Gideon's journal had recorded. None of them remembered hearing about a United Nations fleet assembling anywhere in the days when the adults began to die out. There was nothing about it mentioned in the news. Had they perhaps stumbled by chance upon something that had been top secret? Dr. Gideon had indicated in her writing, Amber having studied it, rereading it several times, that the United Nations fleet was part of an effort to combat and escape something, which certainly could have been the so-called global pandemic, but she had referred to so many elements being classified, and Amber wondered if there was something more to it all than the virus. During the days in the city, the Morat tribe thought they had the answers surrounding Pandorex as a result of all the investigations when Ellie spearheaded her inquiry and published her newspaper, The Amulet. Amber had never been a particular fan of conspiracy theories, believing many of them to be far-fetched, sources of unnecessary worry. The mysterious journal of Dr. Gideon only fueled a seemingly inexhaustible amount of potential reasons. Was the task force dealing with the pandemic, or onto something else? If so, it would pose to be an almost impossible challenge trying to decipher just exactly what. One thing for certain, though. There they were, living on a vast container vessel, a remnant from the adult days. A ship that was part of a fleet intended to save humanity, as Dr. Gideon put it in her words. Had the governments of the world, the United Nations, known more about the pandemic than they had let on to the public? Was there something more to it all than the information that had been released? The priority was to formulate some kind of plan, dealing with what they knew to be fact, opposed to any pointless speculation. It seemed to Amber, along with all the others, except Ram, that their only option was to try and steer the ship to some kind of destination on the assumption that they were in a position to do so, of course. Amber had every faith in Jack and Ram's technical skills, and she wondered how they were getting on up on the bridge. Though she didn't trust Ram as an individual, suspicious of his true motives, believing his past actions had shown him to be nothing but a selfish tyrant, Amber was well aware that he was a genius after all, at least with computers. Nobody doubted that. Ram's intellect and wizardry were clearly off the scale. Jack's technical skills had always been incredible, and he too had an aptitude for computers, though he lacked Ram's programming flair. But if anyone could reactivate the instrumentation on the bridge, then they could. Such a pity Ram wasn't able to channel his many gifts into something positive for humanity, Amber felt. Maybe this was a start, an opportunity for him to change, continue as he meant to go on. She hoped so. He certainly had a lot of ground to cover, amends to make from his past wrongs. "How are they getting on?" Amber asked as Jay entered the cabin. "Any breakthroughs?" Jay had just been to the bridge checking on Jack and Ram's progress, and Amber could see that something was troubling him. "Is everything okay?" Amber asked. "Difficult to know. They managed to get a sat-nav signal for just a few minutes, but the grid just doesn't make any sense, Amber. The coordinates show that we are somewhere near the Pacific Islands, but the grid readings don't refer to any by name, only zones, and no matter how hard Ram tries to cover it up, it seems to be freaking them out, big time." "Why?" Amber replied. "If this was part of a United Nations fleet, maybe they just use zones for their charts rather than any geographical names. The military would often do that, wouldn't they?" "Maybe," said Jay. "But Ram's still going on about using the ship to head back home, to the city. I could understand, in a way, when we were on that trawler. But on this ship, we have a real chance. And I don't get it. Why he can't see." "You don't think he knows something we don't?" Amber considered. "If he did, he's not exactly the person to be very forthcoming, Amber. You know that." "What about Lex and the others? How are they getting on?" Apart from Sammy and Lottie, who were looking after the little ones, all the others had been deployed in shifts to check out more of the containers, crack them open, see what else they could find. "I'll go and catch up with them for an update," Jay said. "Amber, there is one more thing, though." "What?" Jay kissed Amber on the cheek tenderly. "I love you." "Thanks," Amber smiled. She suddenly felt a whole lot better. Jay left, and Amber sat, rereading Dr. Gideon's journal again, trying to fit together any piece of information which might shed light. But she was more preoccupied by Ram. That she still doubted him, wasn't able to trust him, only added to her unease at the tribe's dependence on Ram in their time of need. He had proved in the past he could be a dangerous individual, and if he was holding some secret of any kind, then they would all have to be careful. Slade pounded the rusty steel beneath him as he jogged on the outside deck of the cargo ship, passing Lex and his team examining the containers. He was due to take the next shift, and in his break welcomed the opportunity to have a workout, determined to keep his fitness levels up. But it also helped him to spend some time alone, away from the others, his mind wandering as he jogged, considering all kinds of issues, from the passing of his brother back in the city, his life before the virus, when the adults were still alive, to what the future held out for him and the others, and his relationship with Ebony. He had calculated a circuit for his jogging, weaving in and out of the stacks of containers piled all around. Each lap must be 1/3 of a mile. This was some jogging track, he thought, as the massive cargo ship pitched up and down on the ocean below. He must have jogged a good 3 miles, Slade added in his mind, with just a few more circuits to go. He was trying to achieve a target of 5 miles. Slade rounded the corner, accelerating his stride. It was time to pick up the pace over the last laps and get the cardiovascular system really pumping. Ebony stepped out from a stack of containers on the opposite side of the ship where Lex and the team were working, and Slade took a momentary fright as he nearly collided into her, stopping immediately in his tracks, his chest heaving from his exercise.